Israel is a complex and essential country in the Middle East and is known as a holy land for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, with the Jews believing themselves to be the original owners of the land. For over 2 millennia, the Jews have dreamed of a day to return to their ancestral homeland, rebuild their temple, and return to their former glory. However, this dream has become a nightmare because there are too many forces against Israel as regards their temple. Are the Jews' claims historically correct? If so, how then did they get so far from what was theirs? Are they able to reclaim the land and fulfill the prophecy concerning the land? Answers to all these and more will be provided in this video. The history of Israel dates back several thousand years, filled with events and movements that have shaped the culture and identity of its people. The country is in the Middle East, with a land area of approximately 8,600 square miles and a population of about 9 million. Israel is a country with different blends of cultures merged, with the Jews being the majority and the Arab being the largest minority. We would bring you history in not so many words. Jewish people are identified as one of the world's most ancient civilizations, dating back to ancient times. The Jews' history began in the biblical lands of Israel, where they lived as a Canaanite people in the early centuries before the birth of Christ. According to the Bible, God promised this land to the Jewish people as an eternal possession, and they have consequently identified with it. The Kingdom of Israel was established in the 10th century before Christ with the rule of King Saul, followed by King David and King Solomon. The kingdom remained intact until it was conquered by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Afterward, varying foreign powers ruled the area until the Jewish Zionist movements sought to revive a Jewish homeland in Palestine. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, pledging to establish Palestine as a Jewish homeland, paving the way for establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The Palestine region was made a British protectorate after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. During the British Mandate from 1922 to 1948, tensions grew between Jewish immigrants who migrated to Palestine and Palestinian residents who considered their presence a threat to their sovereignty. Violent outbreaks began when secret militias sprung up, brewing fights between Jews and Arabs, destabilizing the region. The British relinquished their control of Palestine in 1948, leading to the United Nations Partition Plan. This plan divided Palestine into 2 separate entities, one for Jews and the other for Palestinians. The Jewish leaders accepted the proposal, establishing the State of Israel on May 14, 1948. 5 countries, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt, attacked Israel, triggering the First Arab-Israeli War. Fighting with a unified spirit, Israel won the war and expanded its geographical territory. Israel's victory was a defining moment in the 20th century's history, having national and international significance.
This is Victory Day in Jewish Jerusalem, the day the winners of the battle for the Holy City.
Since its inception, Israel has grown considerably, establishing itself as a democratic nation, developing a flourishing economy and scientific achievements, and becoming a thriving cultural center in the Middle East. Despite its size, Israel is an influential country with the potential to impact global politics. Despite its modern-day progress and newly found freedom, Israel is still regarded as the biblical Holy Land by Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Its capital, Jerusalem, holds most of its holy sites like the Temple Mount, Old City, Western Wall, and Mount Zion, among others. In Judaism, Israel is the Holy Land, and Jerusalem is the Holy City. According to them, it is the place that holds the core of their faith, where their journey began. It is an essential aspect of Judaism, serving as a centerpiece for Jewish history, religion, tradition, and culture. For Christians, it is the place where the life and death of Jesus unfolded. For Christians, Israel is a holy land where they can connect with their faith and deepen their relationship with God. Christian pilgrims travel to Israel to visit these sacred biblical sites and walk in the footsteps of Jesus. For many, This pilgrimage to Israel is a life-changing experience that strengthens their faith and helps them grow as individuals. Since the beginning of time, when the Israelites worshipped, they went to temples and synagogues. But since the loss of the first and second temple and the initial land, that has become a bit of a hassle for them. The first temple recorded in the Bible is known as Solomon's Temple. The temple, built by King Solomon to honor God, was built on the site of the present-day Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It existed between the 10th and 6th centuries BC. According to the Old Testament, King Solomon built this temple in Jerusalem to house the Ark of the Covenant and to serve as the center of Jewish worship. The temple was destroyed in 586 BC during the siege laid on Jerusalem by Babylon during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar. After the destruction of Solomon's temple, the second temple, later known as Herod's temple, was constructed. It was built after the Israelites returned from their exile in Babylon. Initially, they built a modest place of worship. Still, it was redesigned and reconstructed into its original structure with giant walls and big columns when King Herod the Great ruled over Judea. The temple served as a central place of worship and sacrifice, where people gathered for prayer, festivals, and sacrifices. The temple also served as a place for the administration of justice, the study of the Torah, and other religious activities. After its recreation, it stood for over 580 years before the Romans again destroyed it during the Roman invasion of Jerusalem in 70 CE. When the Second Temple was destroyed, a proposal to build the Third Temple came to light. The Third Temple was to succeed the First and Second, and be a sacred place of worship for the Jews. The Third Temple is also significant to the beginning of the Messianic Age, but building a temple in Israel is not as straightforward as you might imagine. Now you might ask, why is Israel finding it difficult to rebuild the temple? You're about to find out. Since the fall of the Second Temple, various groups, including Christians and Muslims, have claimed control over the Temple Mount and the site of the former temples, causing a massive problem for the Jews as they cannot seem to lay claim on the land where the previous temples were built. Yet, they cannot go ahead and snatch the land without serious repercussions. One of the issues Israel faces regarding the temple is the social life in the region. The temple is in the middle of Jerusalem, a capital city with complex racial and religious demographics. The construction of the temple may lead to social tensions and polarization of communities. If the temple is built, relocating residents and businesses in the affected area will be required. This can cause resistance from locals who are hesitant to leave their homes. The construction of the temple can put pressure on the existing infrastructure and public services in the area, like schools, hospitals, and other public utilities. Another issue to be considered is the impact of the building of another temple on the environment. The Temple Mount is in a susceptible ecological area, and any disruption can have severe consequences. The construction of the temple may require the removal of rare and endangered species, threatening biodiversity in the area. The temple may also require the excavation of ancient structures or artifacts, which can damage the archaeologically significant sites in the area. This may lead to protests from environmentalists concerned about the area's ecological and historical value. Each time Israel tries to lay any claim on any part of Jerusalem, they are met by opposition from far and wide. And this is because one of the main problems facing the temple is religious issues. The capital city, Jerusalem, is shared with Palestine, and some countries recognize West Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and its east as the capital of Palestine. The temple is a center of Jewish worship, and any changes or disruptions to its construction or operation can cause religious controversies. For example, the location of the temple is a contentious issue. The Temple Mount is one of the holiest places in Judaism, but is also a holy site for Muslims. Historically, debates over ownership and use of the Temple Mount have led to violence and bloodshed. The Muslims would not hear of building a third temple, as it is the site of the Dome of Rock, an Islamic monument at the Temple Mount Center. Jewish visitors are discouraged from visiting the complex, and Jews are prevented from worshipping there. Some scholars also have reason to believe and have strongly claimed, against the Jews' long-standing belief, that no previous Jewish temples were built there. To counter this claim, researchers and scholars performed more research and discovered that the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on a Jewish ritual cleansing site. Robert Hamilton, a British archaeologist, provided the proof of this. He wrote a paper detailing his findings, including his work, investigations of the mosque foundations, and what he found. He achieved a breakthrough in his investigations after an earthquake shook the mosque, causing severe damage and demolishing a part in 1927. He discovered a mikveh, a bath used in Judaism for ritual immersion to achieve purity, underneath the mosque's floor. The mikveh is considered so important to Judaism that it is usually built even before the construction of the temple or synagogue, and should be connected to a natural water source that would continuously replenish it with fresh water, making it living water. This significant part of history was used during the Second Temple and for immersion before gaining access to the Temple Mount. Although they were just recently released, these discoveries are not new. In fact, they were made some centuries ago, but were confiscated by the British Mandate Archives to prevent upsetting Islamic officials. It has been proven that the previous Jewish temples were built where the current Temple Mount sits. The Sanhedrin, a tribunal for the Jews, has begun taking steps for the Jewish temple services to begin soon. Initially, the Sanhedrin played a significant role in the governance of Jewish communities during the Second Temple period. They were responsible for interpreting Jewish law, resolving disputes, and overseeing the execution of punishments. The new Sanhedrin, the Nassan Sanhedrin, is a Jewish religious council re-established in 2004 to revive Jewish law and temple services to prepare for rebuilding the Third Temple in Jerusalem. Although their legitimacy and authority are widely debated within the Jewish community, they have held conferences and made headlines with controversial decisions, one of which is the idea to rebuild the temple. The farmland and forests are being cultivated to provide for the needs of the temple upon construction. The Sanhedrin claims that although people believe that the sacrifices made in the temple are from the blood and ashes of animals, they attested that the plants grown around the temple and Israel were also essential and used in these sacrifices. According to some sources, the Nassan Sanhedrin has reportedly been involved in supervising the cultivation of new forests in Israel in preparation for rebuilding the Third Temple. These efforts began over a decade ago and have been carried out in various locations to recreate the natural environment of Israel in biblical times, as described in Jewish scriptures. The Nassan Sanhedrin has focused on working with Israeli government agencies, private organizations, environmentalists, and individuals to plant trees and perform other land conservation activities, which are important parts of Israel's land conservation efforts. The land is considered an essential part of the Jews' connection to their heritage and the future rebirth of the temple. So these activities are being conducted per Jewish law and tradition. However, like many of the Sanhedrin's decisions on issues, it is essential to know that the Nassan Sanhedrin's involvement in forestry and agriculture activities is partly controversial. Some groups are questioning their authority, while others are raising concerns about the potential impact on the environment and the balance of the ecosystem. The Sanhedrin is primarily focused on promoting and preserving Jewish law and tradition, and facilitating the rebuilding of the temple. While forestation and agriculture are essential components of Israel's land conservation efforts, they fall outside the traditional realm of the Sanhedrin's religious and legal responsibilities. Likewise, any activities related to forestry and agriculture in Israel typically fall under the jurisdiction of government agencies, such as Keren Kayemet LaIsrael, KKL, or the Israeli Ministry of Agriculture, rather than the Sanhedrin. In addition to forestation, one of the preparations put in place because of rebuilding the temple is the training of Kohanim. Kohanim are a group of Jewish individuals descended from the ancient priesthood of Israel with specific religious roles and responsibilities primarily related to performing sacrificial offerings and blessings in the temple in Jerusalem. Although no functioning temple exists, Kohanim maintains its unique status and is accorded certain privileges in Jewish tradition. They are made to go through temple ceremonies held by the Sanhedrin and the temple movement to train them on character and mannerisms. They are also trained in using the types of equipment of the old and new temples and altars, and offering burnt offerings. The new altar can only be built at the site of the original altar atop the Temple Mount. The altar was built uniquely so that it could be quickly dismantled and reassembled in another location. Once rebuilt at its permanent position on the Temple Mount, it can once again be used to offer sacrifices. Orthodox Jews believe that rebuilding the temple is the only solution to the problems faced by the Jewish people and the world. Part of the requirements of rebuilding the temple includes producing a red heifer. To purify the Jews to enable them to take part in temple services, the ashes of the red heifer are needed. Red heifers are extinct, which poses a problem in bringing them back when the temple is rebuilt. How does the Sanhedrin intend to go about it? Since the plans to rebuild the temple have been put in motion, various plans and concepts have been proposed, and one of the most promising is one involving Rabbi Chaim Richman, a rabbi in Israel and the international director of the Temple Institute from 1989 to 2020. The rabbi has been highly invested in bringing back the red heifer to Israel, as is written in Numbers 19, a red heifer without blemish. The heifer was required to be purely red and without blemish, and had never been used for any work or labor, hooked to a plow, impregnated, and coming from a specific lineage. According to Jewish history, only 9 red heifers have ever been slaughtered to purify the Jews between the time of the first and second temples, amounting to about 1,000 years, giving them enough time to become extinct. The slaughtering of a red heifer was previously done on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and was a rare occurrence. Its ashes are believed to have the power to purify those who come into contact with them. The heifers are burnt whole, and their ashes are stored cleanly, mixed with water in small parts for each use. With the guidance and supervision of Rabbi Chaim Richman and other rabbis from the Temple Institute, a non-profit organization dedicated to rebuilding the Third Temple, they got a knowledgeable cattle farmer who understood the animal husbandry concept and attempted to produce a red heifer. They implanted the frozen embryos of North America's Red Angus into Israel's domestic cattle. More is needed for the red heifer to be made available, as there are specific rules regarding its breeding. It had to be born in Israel without blemish. 5 red heifers were recently transported to Israel amidst speculations on their significance. The cows were inspected by rabbis and accepted as worthy as the farmers who breed them left them untagged as part of the requirements for them to have no blemishes. They were located by Bone Israel, a Christian organization responsible for transporting them to Israel. As preparations are being made for the rebuilding of the temple, it is worth noting that the control of the mount still lies with the Muslims, and action must be taken to recover it. Many believe political action is needed to grant Jewish access rather than legal action. In its ruling concerning the work being done, Israel's Judicial Council stated that due to the situation's complexity, the decision was beyond the boundaries of the law, and there were more reasonable ways to decide the case than a legal ruling. This is because there are also political issues against rebuilding the temple. Israel is a democratic country, but it is also a country with a complex political system. The construction of the temple is subject to political debates, which can cause delays and uncertainties that the country cannot afford to deal with, considering all they have at hand. The construction of the temple can affect the international community, especially its neighboring Arab countries. There is already tension in the region between both parties, and the political instability can easily be aggravated and escalated by Israel's decision to rebuild the temple, as some Arab countries view the construction of the temple as a threat to their sovereignty and stability. Also, the project may require foreign aid from the Jewish diaspora and other countries sympathetic to the cause. However, international financial aid comes with political strings attached, a clause that Israel is unwilling to be held by at the moment, as it can be a source of tension between Israel and its possible donors. International or regional organizations, states, or countries might step in as mediators. Still, we can all agree that if it would be settled, the cooperation of leaders of different faiths must be gotten. Christians and Jews make their claims based on the prophecies. What are the prophecies? According to the Bible, and in an understanding of Daniel's prophecy, in Daniel 9:25-27, the prophet Daniel received a vision from an angel that proclaimed the coming of a Messiah, a Savior, the destruction of the city and the temple, and the rebuilding of the temple. The prophecy describes the timeline for rebuilding the temple as 70 weeks, or 490 years. According to the prophecy, the countdown would begin from issuing the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. The first 7 weeks, 49 years, would be for rebuilding the city, followed by 62 weeks, 434 years, for the arrival of an anointed one. After 62 weeks, the anointed one would be killed, and the city and the temple would be destroyed by a new ruler, which was fulfilled with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in 70 CE. The prophecy went on to describe a period of 1 week, 7 years, during which a new leader would arrive, forming solid alliances and covenants with the people. In the middle of the week, halfway through 7 years, the new ruler would stop the offering of sacrifices and defile the temple. When this occurs, it would signal the start of a time of great suffering and punishment, which would last until the end of the 70 weeks. Many people believe that the Antichrist in the prophecy in Revelation 13 is the future political leader that would make a covenant with the Jewish leaders to rebuild the third temple, paving the way for fulfilling some of the prophecies. In doing this, the speculations that the Antichrist would be the one to join hands with the government as a world power to aid in rebuilding the temple might be valid, as both religious and political leaders would willingly follow him. The idea of the Antichrist is based primarily on the writings of the Apostle John in the New Testament. The passage in 1 John chapter 2, verse 18, suggests multiple antichrists will come before the final Antichrist appears. Apostle Paul writes about a man of lawlessness, or a son of destruction, who will oppose and exalt himself over everything called God or worshipped. According to some interpretations of the Bible, the rise in power of the Antichrist would mark the beginning of the end of days and the events leading up to the Battle of Armageddon. Many Christians believe that the Antichrist will lead the forces of evil in the final battle against Jesus Christ, also known as Armageddon. Armageddon is a concept from the Christian Bible referring to the final and ultimate battle between good and evil, where the forces of God will fight the forces of evil. The name comes from the Hebrew term Har Megiddo, meaning Mount Megiddo. In ancient times, Megiddo was a strategic location and was thought to be the site where the final battle would occur. Mount Megiddo in northern Israel is not a mountain, but a tell, a mound or hill created by many generations of people living and rebuilding on the same spot. The events leading to Armageddon include natural disasters, wars, and other calamities. The Bible contains many passages about natural disasters and wars as signs of the end times. Matthew 24, verses 6-8 in the Bible, speaks of wars, rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes as signs of the end times. Again, in Revelation, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are described as a metaphor to represent various disasters, such as conquest, war, famine, and death. In the days leading up to Armageddon, the Bible warns us of the rise of false prophets and teachers who will lead people astray. In Matthew 24-24, Jesus warns us to beware of false messiahs, and strange prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive even the elect. Similarly, in 2 Timothy 4-3-4, the Apostle Paul writes about people who will sound doctrine, reject the truth, and surround themselves with teachers who tell them what they want to hear, rather than what is true, leading them astray. The book of Revelation describes the Battle of Armageddon, which details a final epic war on earth. It is believed that the armies of the Antichrist will come together against the armies of heaven, led by Jesus Christ against them. The forces of the Antichrist will be defeated, marking the ultimate victory of good over evil, ending the reign of the Antichrist and the forces of evil on earth. It is believed that the defeat of the Antichrist will pave the way for the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. And after the battle, it is believed that there will be a 1,000-year reign of peace, known as the Millennial Kingdom, during which Christ will reign on earth. After the Millennial Kingdom, the final judgment will occur, and the good will be rewarded with eternal life, while the wicked will be punished. As against many people's thoughts, Armageddon does not mean the end of the world. It represents the end of wicked, modern-day civilization, the conflict between the nations of the earth and the hosts of heaven. The concept of Armageddon serves as a reminder to live a life of faith and righteousness in preparation for the ultimate judgment by God. The prophecy of Armageddon has also been used as a call to action, urging people to work towards a better world and to strive for social justice and peace. Once Armageddon is mentioned, it inflicts fear in people's minds. With the new conditions worldwide, with wars breaking out, outbreaks of diseases, and false prophets springing up, it seems we are nearing the end of civilization as we know it. Prophecies are coming to fulfillment rapidly. People are getting anxious. Does it mean we are coming to the end of the world? Tell us what you think in the comment section. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for updates.